All right, so we're about 5 hours away from that speech starting. Let's bring in our Sky News Washington analyst, Annelise Nielsen. So let's talk about the wins. You know, no doubt he's going to drive those, Annelise. What are they?
Well, look, he has a good story to tell on the economy in one sense. There has been an improvement on inflation, but the issue he has is that the prices haven't necessarily come down, especially in line with expectations for Americans. And this is the big issue that they have with selling the tariffs as being something that's good for the American economy and American consumers. When we're talking about the Supreme Court ruling, they're now having to pay back up to $175 billion potentially. One of the arguments that the Trump administration is expected to make in these lawsuits is they're going to say we don't have to refund these countries or companies because they passed on the costs to consumers, and so they didn't actually lose out at all. So that's just kind of the extraordinary mental gymnastics when you're talking about, wait, who's been paying for this? At the end of the day, people know that things cost a lot more than they used to. They want improvement. And we're too far off the last election for people to be saying mentally, well, it'd be worse if it was Kamala Harris or if Joe Biden had stuck around. People are very well ensconced in this administration. And so we are talking about Donald Trump having around a 44% approval rating. It's not far off George Bush at this point in his second term, or Barack Obama. But there have historically, as we were talking about, been presidents who've come out very, very positively at the end of their second term. So that's still what Donald Trump would be aiming for, some of those Clinton or Reagan numbers. And this is where he's going to want to put that positive push. He's going to want to make sure he establishes his authority. And this is probably the biggest primetime event he'll have to capture the country's attention before those critical midterms.
I wonder, a couple of the perceived negatives. Well, immigration has been a negative to some, particularly those on the left, those on Democrats too, the ICE raids we're talking about. But illegal immigration at the southern border has dropped significantly. So, I mean, how does he balance that kind of argument? How does he bring all of that today?
Well, look, what the polling is telling us is that the people who are unhappy with the approach on immigration are the ones who didn't like Donald Trump anyway, or the independents or Latino voters. And so that does get complex because trying to survey independent voters in America is extraordinarily difficult because people will call themselves an independent and they've voted Republican for everyone since Jimmy Carter, and people will deliberately register themselves as independents and so they can vote in the primaries of other parties to try and spike good candidates on the other side. So that is tricky. Latino voters is a bit more clear cut. There has been a lot of support among the Latino community for cracking down on illegal immigration because many of those Americans came legally. They went through extraordinary difficulties to come here. Yes, and or even if they did come here in a difficult way, they certainly don't want to bring with the problems of the countries that they've left. But the issue is just the methods. No one likes seeing people being shot in the street, no matter what you feel about that. They don't like the chaos of it. And so when we're kind of looking at those numbers coming down at the same time when you're looking at the methods, that's where they start to lose the handle on the messaging.
Yeah, I think it's a good point too. I mean, I remember talking to you about this at the last election, Annelise, and those legal migrants that we were talking to, they were just as upset as anybody else when it comes to illegal migrants because the legal migrants had to go through all the hoops and all the hurdles to try and get there, and they didn't like the fact that these others were taking shortcuts. Now, when it comes to wars, I wonder how much he's going to talk about that because, so much of his election pitch, speaking of the election, was about America first, yet he's gotten involved now in a lot of foreign wars. I mean, how does he kind of circle that square?
Look, my interpretation on this is always Americans will say they don't like being interventionists. They'll say they want America first and they don't want to be involved in foreign conflicts. They just don't like losing. And so when it comes to getting involved in these overseas confrontations, no one's talking about Venezuela because it was pulled off really well. We're getting oil, we've cut off a really bad dictatorship. And so there is that kind of, well, what's there to complain about? There are concerns around Iran. There is pressure on that. And we've seen Donald Trump say, now we're hearing reports that he said, look, we just want them to promise that there's not going to be any more nuclear armament. And we want that cut off. They're not going to take an Obama-type deal. They're going to want proof and they're going to want proper surveillance. And this is going to be an ongoing pressure point. But Ukraine is just, when we're looking at 4 years since this conflict started, Donald Trump has successfully stopped many overseas conflicts. I mean, just look at what they achieved in Gaza. But Ukraine is still going. It's still a bloodbath. And this is obviously increasingly frustrating for him that he hasn't been able to deliver on that promise.
Just on those polls, we'll wrap up here, Annelise, but I mean, yes, they do go down, and they tend to go down always, barring a few of those circumstances that you brought up, those individuals. But usually by the end of a second term, polls aren't that great. But how bad are they really for Trump this time around? Because I'm still seeing a lot of support for him, so I have some skepticism about those polls.
Oh yeah, and polls are never perfect. You have to look at them over broad trends, context, and like we do, we prioritise talking to real people. But at the end of the day, what happens for most people is they don't mind what a politician does if the economy is strong and life is good. It's the same reason that John Howard stuck around for so long when we had 25 years of consecutive growth in Australia. It's the same reason that people were happy with Reagan at the end and Bill Clinton, because the economy was strong. And so you can kind of tune out the rest when your life's going pretty good.
Sure.
So that's going to be the key. Donald Trump's expected to say, I've got 3 more years. We're better than we were a year ago, and we're going to be better in 3 years. He does have time to turn it around. And when the next set of tariffs come up, we're all supposed to be getting our tax refunds in the US. And so maybe people will feel better with a bit more cash in their pockets. And there is any chance that they could start seeing interest rates cut. And so things moving on that front as well.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, Annelise Nielsen, she's as good as it gets.